The last time I saw my sister Madison, she was sipping her favorite overpriced rosé. Her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically against the crystal glass as she leaned back in her designer chair. The sunlight streaming through the dining room window caught the edges of her flawless blonde waves, casting a halo effect that I'm sure she believed she deserved. "We just want what's best for you, Cassie," my mother cooed, her voice dripping with the same condescension she'd perfected over decades. She dabbed at her eyes with a cloth napkin, as if my mere presence had brought her to the brink of tears. My father Richard swirled his scotch with the slow, deliberate motion of a man who believed he was the head of an empire, not just a moderately successful dentist. He cleared his throat, his gaze sharp and unrelenting. "You can't keep playing around with this tech nonsense. At some point you need to face reality." I forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach my eyes. "Reality? You mean the one where I fetch coffee for my sister while she barks orders from behind her glass desk?" Madison's eyes flicked up her lips, curving into that trademark smug grin. "Everyone has to start somewhere, Cassie. Some of us just start higher than others." I felt my pulse quicken, a familiar heat rising in my chest. I'd heard this script 1,000 times, every line a reminder of the pecking order I'd never quite fit into. Madison was the golden child, the Ivy League graduate, the charity gala darling, the perfect daughter. I was the spare, the one who chose the unpredictable path of tech startups over the polished stability of a corporate career. "I'm not a kid anymore," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. "I've built something real." Richard's brow furrowed, his jaw tightening. "Playing with computers doesn't count as a career, Cassandra." "Actually," I said, forcing myself to keep my voice steady, "it's not just computers. I lead a team of developers. We're building cutting-edge AI technology." Madison snorted, swirling her wine as if I'd just told her I was training to join the circus. "Sounds adorable." My mother reached across the table, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Sweetheart, we're just worried you're wasting your potential. If you took that entry-level position Madison offered, you could learn from someone who's actually accomplished something." The knot in my stomach tightened, the familiar suffocating weight of their low expectations pressing down on me. I looked at my sister's perfectly painted smile, my father's stern disapproval, my mother's carefully masked pity. "I'm doing fine," I said, my voice firmer now. "Actually better than fine." Richard leaned back, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, is that so?" "Yes," I replied, standing up and placing my napkin beside my untouched plate. "And one day, you'll all see it." I turned to leave the air in the room, growing heavier with each step. My mother's voice cut through the silence, trembling but sharp. "Cassandra, don't you dare walk out on this family." I paused in the doorway, glancing back at their stunned faces. "I'm not walking out, I'm moving up." With that, I stepped into the hallway, my pulse still pounding, the sound of Madison's scoff echoing in my ears as I closed the door behind me. I didn't look back. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the underestimated one. But that night, as I walked away from their polished dining room and their polished lives, I felt something crack open inside me, a resolve sharp and unyielding. They had no idea what I was capable of, but they would. Leaving my parents' house that night felt like ripping off a bandage, sharp, immediate, but ultimately freeing. I walked down their pristine driveway, the sound of my heels on the concrete echoing in the quiet, manicured suburb. I reached my car, tossed my purse onto the passenger seat, and slammed the door behind me, gripping the steering wheel as my pulse gradually steadied. For the first time in years, I felt something other than the familiar ache of disappointment. I felt fire. That burning drive I'd buried under layers of self-doubt and family guilt. My sister might have perfected the art of the condescending smirk, but I had something she'd never understand: guts. The next morning, I stood by my apartment window, the sun casting long shadows across my sparsely decorated living room. I sipped my coffee, staring out at the city skyline, the distant hum of traffic, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence of my parents' dining room. My phone buzzed on the counter, the screen flashing a message from my cousin Rachel. "Hey, Cassie Grandma's birthday party is next month. Madison's organizing it. She's been asking about you. You coming?" I stared at the message, my coffee growing cold. My grandmother, the only person in my family who ever truly believed in me, was turning 80. I hadn't spoken to her in years, a casualty of my self-imposed exile. But the idea of stepping back into that world, facing Madison's calculating grin and my parents' disapproving stares, felt like walking into a trap. Another message popped up. "Madison's been telling everyone you've been struggling, that you're figuring things out and might need a little guidance. Thought you'd want to know." I clenched my jaw, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Madison had always been the star, the one who could do no wrong, and she clearly intended to keep it that way, even if it meant rewriting my narrative without my consent. I closed my eyes, feeling the old familiar heat in my veins. No, I wasn't going to let her control the story anymore. I typed a quick reply. Tell me more about this party. I spent the next few days diving into my work with a renewed sense of purpose. My startup, a small but rapidly growing AI company, had been my sanctuary. It was the one place where my ideas weren't just heard but celebrated. My co-founder Ian had once joked that my code was like poetry, efficient, sharp, and brutally honest. We had just secured a major partnership, a deal that could push us from the shadows into the spotlight, and I knew that if I played my cards right, this party could be my coming out moment. Not just as a tech entrepreneur, but as someone my family could no longer ignore or diminish. A week before the party, I received another message from Rachel. Heads up, Madison's been showing everyone pictures of you. Some old Facebook posts, a few tagged photos. She's building a narrative. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I knew Madison's game. She was trying to frame me as the struggling, wayward little sister, setting the stage for another one of her charity case interventions. But this time I had a different story to tell. I spent the next few nights drafting my own narrative, reorganizing my online presence, updating my LinkedIn, quietly ensuring my achievements were more visible, my company's growth more apparent. I polished my website, added a few strategic testimonials, and sent out a press release about our recent deal. Then I called Ian. Hey, I said, leaning back in my office chair, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. Remember that favor you owe me? The one where I accidentally crashed your launch party and ended up with a bottle of tequila in each hand. He replied, his voice light but curious. Yeah, that one. I need you to help me make a statement. Oh, we going full tech mogul on someone? I smiled, feeling the fire in my chest reignite. Something like that. The morning of the party, I woke to an email from a business journalist I'd connected with at a conference last year. The subject line was simple. 30. Under 30 nomination, follow-up. I opened it, my pulse quickening as I scanned the words. They wanted to do a feature on me and my company, a full profile complete with photos and interviews. I leaned back in my chair, the familiar hum of my laptop cooling fan filling the room. Madison thought she was crafting a story where I was the family's black sheep, the lost little sister. But she had no idea that I had already written my own chapter, one she would never see coming. I hit reply, my fingers moving faster than my thoughts. I'd love to set up a time to chat. Let's make this a piece they'll never forget. I closed my laptop, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. It was time to remind my family who I really was. The day of Grandma's birthday party arrived and the city buzzed with early summer heat. I stood in front of my closet, running my fingers over the row of blazers and dresses I'd carefully curated over the years. Today required something special, something that said, I'm not who you thought I was. I settled on a sleek navy dress, one that cut just above the knee, paired with my favorite black pumps. Professional, sharp, and just a touch intimidating. Exactly the vibe I wanted to project. I glanced at my reflection, adjusting the simple diamond studs in my ears, a small private smile tugging at my lips. Today wasn't just about showing up, it was about taking back my story. As I walked into the country club's grand ballroom, the cool blast of air conditioning hit me, a stark contrast to the sweltering street outside. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the polished marble floors, and the soft hum of classical music floated through the air. My parents spared no expense when it came to appearances, and today was no exception. I scanned the room, catching sight of Madison near the bar, her head thrown back in a practiced, polished laugh as she chatted with a group of family friends. Her blonde hair, perfectly styled in loose waves, caught the light, making her look every bit the golden child she'd always been. My mother, dressed in a blush pink ensemble that likely cost more than my rent in my early startup days, spotted me from across the room. She hesitated, her hand pausing midair as she set down her champagne glass, her eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to place the face in front of her. I felt a strange flicker of satisfaction as she hurried over, a too bright smile plastered on her face. Cassie, darling, she said, air kissing the space beside my cheek. You made it. Of course, I replied smoothly, slipping my clutch under my arm. Wouldn't miss Grandma's big day. She pulled back her eyes, flicking over my outfit, her expression shifting to something more appraising. You look different. I should hope so, I said, tilting my head slightly. It's been a few years. Before she could respond, my father approached, his expression caught somewhere between surprise and confusion. He'd always been a man of sharp suits and sharper words, his approval as rare as a total eclipse. "Cassandra," he said, his tone cautious, as if I might explode at any moment. "You look successful." I smiled, the same tight, controlled smile I'd practiced in countless boardrooms. "I am." The silence stretched between us, heavy and awkward, before my mother cut in, looping her arm through my father's. "Well, let's not stand here like strangers. Come, let's mingle." I followed them into the heart of the party, passing clusters of distant relatives and family friends, their curious glances sliding over me like spotlights. I caught snippets of conversation as I moved through the crowd. Whispers of surprise, fragments of gossip. "Is that Cassie? I heard she moved back to the city. Is she still doing that tech thing?" Then I spotted her grandma Ruth, the woman who'd taught me how to play poker at 8 and never let me win, her eyes sharp and knowing as ever, sitting in a corner watching the party unfold. She looked up as I approached, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across her face. "Well, if it isn't my long-lost granddaughter," she said, her voice raspy but clear like the crackle of an old vinyl record. "Come give me a hug, you sneaky thing." I leaned in, her frail arms wrapping around me with surprising strength. She pulled back, her eyes narrowing slightly as she searched my face. "You look good," she said, her gaze flicking over my dress, my confident stance. "Different." "I am," I replied, settling into the chair beside her. "And I have you to thank for a lot of that." She snorted, tapping her cane against the polished floor. "Oh, don't give me that credit. You did it all on your own. I just gave you a push now and then." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Madison's planning something. She's been digging into my life, trying to find something to use against me." Grandma's eyes sparkled with a mischievous light. "Oh, I know. She's been flapping her gums to anyone who'll listen. But let me tell you something, Cassie, she's not nearly as clever as she thinks she is." I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a quiet kind of vindication. Grandma had always seen through Madison's polished facade, understood the game better than anyone. "I just wanted to give you a heads up," I said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "She's got something planned for today." Grandma chuckled, the sound dry and sharp, like the crack of dry leaves underfoot. "Oh, let her try. I'm 80 years old, Cassandra. I've seen more family drama than a soap opera marathon. Trust me, I'm ready for whatever that girl's got up her sleeve." I squeezed her hand, feeling the steady pulse of her heartbeat beneath my fingers. "I'll handle it." "I know you will," she replied, her eyes softening for a moment. "You always were the fighter." I straightened, feeling a surge of confidence as I looked around the room, my eyes locking with Madison's for a brief electric second. She raised her glass in my direction, her smile sharp, her eyes cool. I raised mine back, feeling the weight of the envelope in my clutch, the one containing the files I'd been quietly compiling for weeks. Evidence of my success, proof of my rise, and a few other surprises Madison would never see coming. The game was on. I had barely taken a sip of the champagne someone had pressed into my hand when Madison appeared beside me, her smile as sharp as the diamonds around her neck. "Cassie," she purred, leaning in close, the subtle floral notes of her perfume mingling with the clinking of glasses around us. "I'm so glad you made it." "Of course," I replied, holding her gaze, refusing to flinch under the weight of her carefully curated charm. "Wouldn't miss it." Her eyes flicked over my dress, her smile tightening. "I didn't realize you still had that. It's a bit classic for you, isn't it?" I bit back a smirk, recognizing the old Madison, always the master of the backhanded compliment. "I like classics," I said smoothly, letting my gaze drift over her shoulder where several of our cousins were watching our exchange with thinly veiled curiosity. "They have a way of outlasting trends." She blinked, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening around the stem of her glass for the briefest of moments, before she recovered, her smile widening. "I suppose so," she replied, her tone taking on that syrupy sweet quality she reserved for moments when she felt her control slipping. "But I hear you've been trying something a bit more modern these days. Tech startups and all that. You could say that," I replied, tilting my head, letting the light catch the small diamond pendant at my neck, a gift to myself after we closed our first $1 million deal. "It's been an interesting few years." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You know, if you ever need a real job, my firm is always hiring." I let out a soft, genuine laugh, watching the surprise flicker across her face. "I appreciate the offer, Madison, but I think I'll manage." Her smile froze her eyes, narrowing just enough for me to catch the hint of frustration before she smoothed her expression back into its polished, practiced mask. She straightened her chin, lifting slightly as she glanced around the room. "Well," she said, her tone a touch too bright, "I should make the rounds. We'll catch up later." "Looking forward to it." I replied, watching as she melted back into the crowd, her smile still fixed, her shoulders a touch stiffer than before. I turned, catching Grandma's eye from across the room. She raised her glass in a small approving toast, her eyes sparkling with quiet amusement. I felt a surge of warmth, the tightness in my chest easing just a bit. Grandma had always been my silent ally, the one person who had never bought into Madison's perfect facade. As the evening wore on, I found myself drifting from group to group, shaking hands, exchanging polite small talk, and fielding the occasional probing question about my work. It felt like a subtle interrogation, a thinly veiled attempt to gauge just how far I'd climbed since my self-imposed exile from the family fold. Then, just as the string quartet struck up a lively waltz, the microphone near the head table crackled to life. Madison had taken the small makeshift stage, her glass raised high, her smile radiant under the chandelier's warm glow. "If I could have everyone's attention," she called, her voice carrying effortlessly over the soft hum of conversation. "I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our beloved grandmother's 80th birthday." A wave of polite applause swept through the room, and I felt the muscles in my shoulders tighten. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used when she was setting the stage for one of her carefully scripted takedowns. "Family has always been at the heart of everything I do." She continued, her gaze sweeping the room, briefly resting on me before moving on. "It's what drives me to give back, to build something meaningful. It's why I founded the Empower Women Foundation, to support those who might not have had the same opportunities I've been so fortunate to receive." More applause, a few murmurs of approval from the older relatives near the front. I forced myself to remain still, my pulse picking up a faint ringing in my ears. And she added, her eyes locking onto mine, her smile sharpening to a blade. "It's what inspires me to help my family whenever I can." I felt the air grow thicker, the weight of 100 eyes settling on me as she continued. "Which is why," she said, her voice dripping with faux sincerity, "I was so thrilled to hear that my little sister Cassie is back in the city pursuing her passion for technology." The murmurs grew louder, a few heads turning in my direction, the corners of Madison's mouth twitching as she basked in the attention. She had the crowd in the palm of her hand, her carefully laid trap about to snap shut. "I've always believed in supporting each other," she said, her eyes never leaving mine, her smile widening as she twisted the knife, "even when the path isn't as traditional as some might hope." I felt my cheeks flush, the familiar sting of humiliation prickling at the edges of my composure. But then I caught Grandma's eye again, her expression one of quiet, fierce pride, and I felt the fire in my chest reignite. Madison paused, waiting for the laughter to die down, the satisfied gleam in her eyes unmistakable. "So let's raise a glass," she said, her voice carrying over the growing whispers, "to family, to support, and to never giving up on those we love." Glasses clinked, the crystal chiming like tiny bells, and I raised mine as well, my pulse thundering in my ears. Madison's eyes met mine over the rim of her glass, her smile sharp and satisfied, as if she had just delivered the perfect final blow. But as I sipped my champagne, I felt a slow, dangerous smile creep onto my lips. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd set me up for a public fall, surrounded by the people who had once written me off as a failure. But Madison had no idea what was coming next. As the night continued, I drifted through the crowd, my mind spinning with possibilities. Madison had made her move subtly, painting me as the underachieving sibling, a project for her to mold into something respectable. But she had underestimated me. I wasn't the same Cassie she'd dismissed years ago. I slipped out to the balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief from the stifling warmth of the ballroom. I needed a moment to clear my head, to steady my nerves before the next phase of my plan. The city lights stretched out below, a glittering sea of possibility, each tiny light a reminder of how far I'd come. "Fancy seeing you out here." I turned to find my cousin Rachel leaning against the railing, her champagne glass already half empty, a knowing smile on her lips. "Needed some air," I replied, leaning my forearms on the cool metal. Madison's performance was a bit much even for her. Rachel snorted, swirling her glass. "You know she's been talking about you nonstop for weeks. I think you've officially gotten under her skin." "Good," I said, letting a slow smile spread across my lips. "That's exactly where I want to be." She raised an eyebrow, her curiosity clearly piqued. "You're up to something, aren't you?" I just smiled, taking a sip of my own drink, letting the silence answer for me. Rachel's eyes narrowed, a spark of mischief flaring to life. "Well, if you need an ally, you know where to find me." "I'll keep that in mind," I replied, giving her a small nod as she disappeared back into the party, her laughter trailing behind her like a whispered promise. As the evening wore on, I felt the tension in the room shift. The polished conversations grew sharper, the laughter more forced. I caught snippets of whispered conversations, the sideways glances growing more frequent. Madison's carefully constructed narrative was starting to crumble, and I hadn't even made my move yet. Then just as the band struck up another slow melodic tune, my phone buzzed in my clutch. I slipped it out, my heart skipping a beat as I saw the name flashing on the screen. Ian. I stepped back out onto the balcony, the cool breeze brushing against my skin as I answered. "Hey," I said, my voice low. "You're not going to believe this," Ian said, his tone breathless, a hint of excitement bleeding through the line. "I just got a tip from one of my contacts at the Times. They're running a profile on you next week. Front page of the business section." I felt my pulse spike, my fingers tightening around my phone. "Seriously?" "Dead serious," he replied, a hint of a chuckle in his voice. "Seems like your little sister's smear campaign backfired. They want the real story, and you're about to become the face of the next big tech disruptor." I leaned back against the cold brick wall, my mind racing. This was better than I could have hoped for. If the story broke before Madison's plan went into full effect, it would completely undercut whatever narrative she'd been building. "Thanks, Ian," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline pulsing through my veins. "I owe you one. Just make sure I get a front row seat when you blow this thing wide open," he replied, his tone light but serious. "And Cassie." "Yeah, don't hold back." I smiled, ending the call as I slipped my phone back into my clutch. I straightened, taking a deep breath, feeling the familiar thrilling rush of control flooding my system. I re-entered the ballroom, the noise and light washing over me, the smell of expensive perfume and fine wine filling the air. I moved through the crowd, my chin high, my stride confident. I felt eyes follow me, curious whispers trailing in my wake. As I approached the head table, I caught Madison's eye. She paused mid-sentence, her laughter faltering for a split second, her perfectly painted smile slipping. I held her gaze, letting a slow, satisfied smile creep onto my lips, my confidence radiating from every pore. I slid into my seat beside Grandma, who gave me a sly, sideways glance, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You look like a cat that just caught a very juicy canary," she whispered, leaning in close enough for only me to hear. "Let's just say," I replied, my voice low, my pulse steady. "Things are about to get interesting." Grandma chuckled, lifting her glass in a subtle toast. "Good. I do love a bit of family drama." As the evening wore on, I felt the tide shift further. People were glancing at their phones, their expressions ranging from surprise to confusion. I caught snippets of conversation, mentions of my company's name, murmurs about the upcoming article, whispers of unexpected success. Then, just as the cake was being wheeled out, Madison stood again. Her glass raised, her smile wide and brittle, a hint of desperation bleeding into her tone. "If I could have everyone's attention," she called, her eyes darting around the room, the first signs of cracks appearing in her polished veneer. "I'd like to make a little announcement." I felt the air in the room shift, a collective intake of breath as the crowd turned to face her, their curiosity sharpened to a fine edge. "As many of you know," she continued, her voice growing louder, more frantic, "my sister has recently returned to the city, and while I've always believed in supporting family, I think it's important that we all understand the reality of the situation." She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing, her smile tightening, the thin veneer of her control slipping further. "After all," she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic whisper, "we wouldn't want anyone to be misled." I met her gaze, my pulse steady, my heart a slow, powerful drumbeat in my chest. She had no idea what she was walking into. The trap was set, and Madison was about to walk right into it. The ballroom fell silent as Madison paused. Her smile stretched a bit too tight, her eyes darting nervously around the room. She had everyone's attention, but for the first time it looked like the spotlight was making her sweat. "I just want to say," she continued, raising her glass a little higher, "how proud I am of my sister for pursuing her dreams, even if they've led her down unconventional paths." The words hung in the air, dripping with carefully veiled condescension. I met her gaze, refusing to flinch, my pulse steady, as the room watched us, the tension crackling like static electricity. "And," she added, her tone growing sharper, her smile twisting into something more sinister, "I'm sure we can all agree that family support is what truly matters." A few scattered claps, awkward and unsure, broke the silence. I felt my jaw clench, my fingers tightening around the stem of my glass. She was trying to paint me as the ungrateful black sheep, the lost cause brought back into the fold out of pure saintly charity. But I had come prepared. I set my glass down, the soft clink against the table ringing like a starting bell. I caught Grandma's eye, her smile wide and wicked, and felt a surge of adrenaline. "Madison," I said, my voice carrying across the room, slicing through the murmurs like a blade. Thank you for that touching speech. Her eyes snapped to mine, the faintest flicker of alarm crossing her perfectly made-up face. But if we're talking about support, I continued, slowly rising to my feet, my heart a steady, powerful drumbeat in my chest. Perhaps we should set the record straight. The room fell deathly quiet, every head turning toward me, every eye locked in anticipation. I've spent years building my company, I said, my voice strong and clear. Years creating something real, something I'm proud of. And I've done it without the safety net of the family trust, without the connections you so generously flaunt. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd, heads turning to whisper behind manicured hands, eyes darting between me and my sister. And speaking of support, I continued, reaching into my clutch and pulling out the crisp, neatly folded article Ian had sent me earlier that day. I'd like to share a little something with you all. I unfolded the paper, holding it up for everyone to see. The bold headline gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. Tech pioneer Cassandra Blake redefines AI. A billion-dollar vision. Gasps echoed around the room, the sound sharp and disbelieving, a wave of shock crashing over the assembled guests. I watched Madison's face pale, her eyes widening as she took in the words, her carefully curated mask slipping for the first time all evening. That's right, I said, letting the words roll off my tongue, each syllable a small, satisfying victory. While some people were busy crafting narratives and controlling family reputations, I was building something that matters. I set the paper down, the soft rustle echoing in the stunned silence, and met my sister's furious, wide-eyed stare. I'd say thank you for the motivation. I continued, my smile sharp as glass. But I think we both know I never needed your approval to succeed. The room erupted into a flurry of whispers, the guests leaning in close, their voices tinged with awe and disbelief. I saw my parents across the room, my father's face a mixture of shock and something I hadn't seen in years, respect. My mother's hand covered her mouth, her eyes wet with something that might have been pride or maybe just pure stunned disbelief. Madison's mouth opened and closed, her perfect teeth bared in a silent snarl, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. She looked around wildly, her eyes darting to the exits, her carefully controlled world crumbling around her. I felt a hand on my arm, warm and steady. I turned to find Grandma, her eyes bright with fierce pride, her grip surprisingly strong for her age. "Well done," she whispered, leaning in close, her voice a soft rasp in my ear. "I knew you had it in you." I met her gaze, the warmth in her eyes, a balm against the years of doubt and dismissal. I gave her a small nod, my chest swelling with a sense of triumph I hadn't felt in years. As the crowd continued to buzz around us, Madison stumbled back, her hands trembling. Her eyes wild as she glanced around the room, looking for an escape, a way to salvage her shattered image. But there was no saving face now. I stepped back, watching as she melted into the shadows, slipping through the crowd like a ghost, her perfect, polished world finally shattered. I felt Grandma squeeze my arm once more before letting go, her eyes still sparkling with that familiar, mischievous light. "Go on," she whispered, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across her face. "Take a bow." I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and turned to face the room. My heart thundering in my chest, my pulse a slow, powerful drumbeat in my veins. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, and I had never felt more alive. Story 2. I was in excruciating misery the day my sister made her demand for my house, updating the walls in the living area for her engagement supper. I still chuckle in that hollow manner at the irony. Your chest hurts from that. I'm Nicole, and I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to preventing this property from becoming just another foreclosure crisis statistic. Roslyn. My younger sister was sharing stories on Instagram from Cabo at the time. To pay my mortgage, I was living off of ramen and working 2 jobs. There was nothing left of my father's gambling habit. Nicole. Rosalind's voice cut through my focus as the front door banged. "Why don't you have on some clothes yet? In an hour, everyone will be here." Wiping perspiration from my brow, I descended from the stepladder and completed some necessary touch-ups on the wall. The wall doesn't matter to anyone. Rosalind dismissively waved her immaculately manicured hand. The light fell on her engagement ring. "It's probably worth more than my whole closet." The parents of Easton will be arriving. This property must have a flawless appearance. I suppressed an answer about how I kept this home looking flawless all the time. I feigned a smile instead. "I need 20 minutes to change and take a shower." As I was zipping up my dress, the doorbell rang. My roommate and best friend Trinity peered into my room. Your parents are present. Do you want my hero to run interference? I gave my lips a swift sweep. How awful is it? Already your dad is griping about the thermostat. Additionally, your mom is moving the appetizers I laid out. Fantastic. I inhaled deeply before going downstairs. Our Nicole is there. Mom kissed my cheek and whispered that. The home looks darling. She hesitated, looking for criticism. You did your best, though. Dad never even raised his head from his phone. This place is extremely hot. It's a waste of money. It's also good to see you, I whispered, but they were now swooning over Easton, who had just come with his parents and Rosalind. The actual supper was agonizing. As everyone talked about wedding plans and future grandchildren, I sat there getting my dinner. I noticed my dad's fingers twitching as he continued to discuss investment options, and I knew too much about his gambling past. Rosalind cleared her throat after that. We wanted to talk to you about something important, Nicole. There was silence in the room. I saw my parents look at each other. As you are aware, Rosalind went on, I want to begin our lives with Easton. Somewhere historic, someplace remarkable. I felt sick to my stomach. They wouldn't, of course, but I could see where this was headed. We believe it would be fantastic. Mom got right in. If you presented your sister with the house as a wedding gift. The fork clattered against the plate as it fell out of my hand. Please pardon me. That's a great idea, Dad said sternly. You're single and career-focused. Rosalind requires a suitable family residence. A decent family house. Slowly, I repeated. Do you mean the house I've been paying for since I was 22 and that I kept from going into foreclosure? Rosalind gave an eye roll. Avoid being theatrical. We all pitched in. Everyone was helpful. I got up so quickly that my chair brushed the floor. When I had to leave college to make ends meet while working 60-hour weeks. Where was your assistance, Nicole, now? The tone of Mom's voice became the sickly sweet tone she used to attempt to control me. We are related. Family members help one another. Family. Even I thought it sounded weird when I laughed. Is that the name we are using for this? Trinity lightly stroked my arm. Let's all take a breath, perhaps. There's no need, I remarked abruptly. I'll give it some thought. I felt nauseous at the relief on their expressions. They believed they had triumphed, as usual. Already displaying Pinterest boards on her phone to provide Easton's mother with remodeling ideas, Rosalind grinned. After everyone had gone later that evening, I sat by myself in my kitchen and gazed over the business card that my friend Luke, a realtor, had given me months prior, just in case I had preserved it. Only for a second. Such like this. As I dialed his phone, my hands remained steady. Nicole here, Luke. Do you recall our discussion about selling? I'm prepared. Trinity was standing in the doorway when I hung up. Are you all right? No, I was honest. However, I will be. As they took and stole something from me, I glanced about at the walls I had painted, the flooring I had redone, and the life I had created, hardened much like concrete. My house was what they desired. All right? However, they were going to discover the consequences of pushing the family doormat too far. The fragrance of coffee and new printer paper filled Luke's workspace. With practiced efficiency, he laid out the papers on his desk, indicating each line of signatures. The sale is final once you sign these, he continued. We may close in 48 hours since the investors are providing cash. Do you have complete confidence in this? I grabbed the pen. What is the amount? For 25. Once again. Sufficient to pay off the mortgage and leave with a respectable margin. I kept my hand over the page. 5 years of my existence, reduced to a page's worth of numbers. I reflected on all of the overtime, missed vacations, and credit card debt I had accrued in order to maintain this property. I said, do it, and began to sign. Trinity's automobile was waiting outside. It's finished, though. My seatbelt was fastened. On Thursday, they take possession. Nicole? She took hold of my hand. There's no turning back after you've done this. Family isn't what your family is. I withdrew my hand. They simply become quite accustomed to taking advantage of me. It buzzed on my phone. Rosalind texted to say she was getting engagement pictures done at the home tomorrow. Ensure that the lawn has been mowed. I presented the message to Trinity. She gave a low whistle. The boldness. Oh, it improves. I read through other texts. The reception is already being planned by Mom. My dad is considering turning my home office into a nursery. Do they genuinely believe you will give it to them? They do, don't they? They don't believe, they anticipate. I passed by the house on my way to work the following morning. Rosalind, wearing a flowing white dress, stood on my front porch as a photographer set up equipment. Like a Hollywood producer, rearranging potted plants I'd spent years growing. Mom set the setting. Mom insisted on keeping the Sunday breakfast ritual, so I continued to drive. Amid wedding magazines, Rosalind presided over the neighborhood cafe. She said that the caterers want a final number. "You're not bringing anyone?" "Are you, Nicole? You'll just be seated at the singles table," I answered, stirring my coffee. "Actually, I may not be able to make it." There was silence at the table. "You might not make it? What do you mean?" Mom could have frozen hell with her voice. "Your sister is getting married at my place," Rosalind went on. "Where, at this stage, you are really simply a home-sitter." Dad put his newspaper down. "Nicole, stop giving your sister the attitude she needs. I must leave." I threw money on the table and got up. "Work-related items? On a Sunday?" Mom laughed. "When did you start, since I am responsible for paying for everything myself?" The words sounded harsher than they should have. A pair looked across from the adjacent table, sorting through boxes of old pictures I had taken from the home took up the remainder of my day at Trinity's apartment. The majority were yellowed pictures of festivities I missed at work and family holidays I had never taken. Then 3 years ago, I discovered a handwritten message hidden within an album. In his sloppy handwriting, Dad discussed with Jerry how selling the house would generate enough cash to pay off bills. "Nicole doesn't have to find out just yet." My hands began to shake. While I was dying myself to rescue it, they had attempted to sell it behind my back. "Are you all right?" From the kitchen, Trinity called. I showed the message to her. In any case, they were planning to sell it, following all that I did. Jesus. She gave it 2 readings. "These folks are no longer worth defending, Nicole." I took out my phone and sent Luke a text. "Everything remains scheduled for Thursday." He responded immediately. "Ready?" At 9 a.m., the new owners are performing their last walkthrough. I needed to finish one more family meal. Another evening of feigning that Mom got takeaway because she was too busy planning the wedding to prepare meals. As Rosalind went over her restoration ideas, we sat around my dining room table, which I had refinished myself. She said that the partitions separating the dining room and kitchen must be removed. "It's really out of date." "Bearing load," I mumbled. "What?" "Nothing." I put my house keys on the table and got up. Everyone stared at them in silence. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Oh dear, I knew you would act morally." Dad nodded approvingly, finally displaying some family devotion. Grinning, Rosalind grabbed the keys. "I knew you would change your mind. Baby Easton, tonight is the best time for us to begin packing." I made my way to the door, stopping only to text Luke one more time. "It will take place tomorrow." I could hear them preparing, rejoicing and vulture-like, dividing up my life behind me. They were unaware of what was about to happen. Karma occasionally requires a little encouragement. And Karma was arriving with moving trucks and legal paperwork at precisely 9 in the morning tomorrow. All the way home, I grinned. For our final family meal at my place, I got there early. Watching them dig their own graves with every entitled statement tonight was more important than the moving trucks that would arrive tomorrow. Mom rearranged my spice rack for the 10th time while rushing around my kitchen as if she already owned it. "These expired months ago, Nicole. How do you manage to live this way?" I get by. I looked at my phone. Luke confirmed the schedule for tomorrow in 7 scriptures. Rosalind rushed in carrying 3 swatches of paint. For the living room, I'm considering sage green. The hue is pretty simple right now. I had painted those walls myself for 12 hours. "Roz, do anything you want." Dad had already wandered in. "I'm 3 beers deep." He grabbed one of the samples of paint. "It appears pricey." "Nicole, I take it you're paying for the renovations because you're not helping with the wedding." Easton showed up with a bottle of champagne before I could reply. "It's time to rejoice." The first portion of our wedding present was recently transferred by my parents. "We can get started on the kitchen makeover you've been dreaming of, Roz." "Excellent." Rosalind gave a hand clap. "At last we can get rid of those terrible countertops." After 3 months of putting in extra hours, I built the countertops myself. Trinity, who had demanded to be present to offer moral assistance, got my attention from the other side of the room. She nodded subtly at me. "Dinner is prepared," Mom declared as she brought a dish to the table. "Nicole, I take it we're utilizing the good china." Your grandmother's set. You've already packed it away. To keep myself safe, I grinned. Dad held up his drink. Maybe we should make it official. To Nicole for doing something properly at last. And thanks to Rosalind for providing this site with the much-needed makeover. Everybody clinked their glasses. I looked at my watch and took a sip of water. The show is 12 hours away. Rosalind leaped up. Oh, I nearly forgot. The location of the tent setup must be known by the wedding coordinator. I'm thinking about your garden right now. The day after I paid off Dad's gambling debts, I planted the garden. Every flower was purchased with borrowed funds and worked tirelessly. That sounds great, I answered. Mom smiled. You see, this is the essence of family, helping one another. Let's not drag this out, Nicole. I know you've been tough about it, but it's good to see you finally accept your sister's happiness. I cut you off. You achieved your goal. Sis, don't be resentful. Rosalind gave an eye roll. It's not pretty. Additionally, you are welcome to visit at any time. When we go on vacation, we could even let you house it. I sneaked upstairs after supper while everyone else was preoccupied with wedding preparations. The majority of the boxes in my bedroom were already labeled packed and prepared for tomorrow. The final family portrait in which we all appeared content before Dad's gambling and before Mom's deception was on my bed. Rosalind was the golden child before that. Behind me, I heard movement. In the doorway appeared Trinity. There is nothing that you owe them. I am aware. This still stings even after I put the picture face down. We both jumped when there was a crash from downstairs. My beloved reading chair was being dragged toward the front door by Rosalind and Dad when we hurried down. What are you doing? I insisted. The new aesthetic isn't compatible with it. As she struggled with the chair, Rosalind spoke. It will be added to the pile of donations. While figuring out how to salvage this house, I spent many nights in the chair that I had saved from a thrift store and had holstered by hand. Something broke inside of me. Give up. I sounded like ice. Set it down. Oh, Rosalind whimpered. Hurry up. Avoid being theatrical. Put it down, I said. They genuinely listened, perhaps because of my tone or something in my face. Nicole, Mom's mediator voice began to be used. Your sister is only making an effort. To what end? Take more. Destroy more. I approached the chair and ran my fingers over its shabby arm. What's humorous, do you? Do you all believe that tomorrow will be this significant new beginning, fresh starts? Your ideal little dream. Dad scowled. What is the intended meaning of that? I took one final look at my phone. The screen lit with Luke's message. Everything is scheduled for 9:00 a.m. Nothing. Sweetly, I replied, simply thinking aloud, everyone, you need to sleep. It will be a fascinating day tomorrow. You see, Mom put her hand on my arm. I knew you would change your mind. After all, blood is thicker than water. Her touch on my arm caught my attention. Then Rosalind's arrogant attitude at Dad's contemptuous look. A footnote in their story of the ideal family after 5 years of hardship. Mom, you're correct. I took her hand away gently. Water is not as thick as blood, and you will all discover just how thick it is tomorrow. They chuckled, presumably assuming I was making some awkward toast. However, Trinity caught my look and promptly excused us from going. She inquired in the vehicle, Are you prepared for tomorrow? I was already rearranging my furnishings and making plans for my family's future in my home as I observed them through the window. I claimed I was more than ready. They need to understand the consequences of biting the hand that feeds you. I parked across the street from my house at precisely 8:57 a.m. There were already 2 moving trucks, a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize, and Luke's automobile. From the passenger seat, Trinity replied, Just on time. Are you prepared? I observed as the Mercedes' new owners, a well-dressed couple in their 40s, got out. Luke shook their hands in greeting. 3, 2, 1. I did a countdown. Mom's SUV screamed around the bend just like it should have. With her face contorted in bewilderment, she jumped out after barely putting it in park. A few seconds later, Rosalind and Dad's vehicle arrived. What's happening, BMW? Mom strode over to Luke and demanded, Who are these individuals? Luke's smile was professional. Good morning. The sale is being handled by me, the realtor. You must be the family sale of the prior renter. Rosalind let out a cry. Which sale? I got out of my vehicle. Trinity is directly behind me. Dad was the first to notice me. Nicole, he rushed over. What on earth is this? This is the new owners taking possession of their property, I remarked gently. Mom's face turned pale. What are you discussing? We got the keys from you. I handed over my extra keys to you. After 5 years in my name, the deeds are now in theirs. I pointed to the pair who were becoming increasingly uneasy as they watched the incident play out. This is not possible. Easton grabbed Rosalind's arm as she surged forward. This is where we're meant to reside. Your current issue is the wedding. I gave Luke the last set of documents. The home has been sold. I'm going to call the cops. Mom struggled to use her phone. Proceed. I dismissed the sales law. I am perfectly entitled to sell my house. Your land. A scarlet flush came across Dad's cheeks. Your family is us. Family. I chuckled. While I'm working 2 jobs to save the house, my family doesn't try to sell it behind my back. I did find the message concerning your conversation with Jerry, Dad. As if I had smacked him, he staggered back. This is crazy. Easton raised his voice, glancing between Rosalind and myself. You owned the house the entire time. Every property tax bill, every repair, every mortgage payment. When your fiancé was sharing selfies from the beach, I looked him in the eyes. To keep a roof over her head, I was putting in extra hours at work. Trinity took the lead, but you ungrateful little mom started. I carefully consider what you say next. She cautioned the movers to get to work. The moving team came over as if on cue. Where do we start? The main bedroom. Everything is labeled, I said. Then Rosalind screamed, strangled. Are you just going to give them everything? Not all of it. I took my phone out, displaying the inventory to her. Only the majority of stuff is mine, because I purchased everything. Don't worry, however. I went to the garage and left your old posters. Luke called to my mother, Mrs. Burton, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. You must relocate your car. The driveway must be accessible to the trucks. She cried, This isn't happening. How could you have treated your sister the same way you treated me, Nicole? I placed myself first and caught her look. Dad took hold of my arm. Here, you listen. Safety. When Luke yelled, 2 cops in uniform got out of their patrol car. I hadn't even seen them come in. Is anything wrong? Dad let me go right away. The new owners are eager to start moving in. Luke went on without incident. Everyone who isn't involved in the transfer of property must go. It's not over yet. With mascara streaming down her cheeks, Rosalind spit. Do you believe you have won, Nicole? You just gave this family the finger. I gave her a glance. For the first time in years, I gave her a serious look. My younger sister, who continued to take until she ran out of things to take. No, I answered softly. At last, I stepped outside the explosion radius. Chaos ensued over the following hour. Mom cried. Dad tossed a chair. Before Easton literally dragged her through it all, Rosalind attempted to shut herself in my office. Trinity, Luke, and I watched as movers meticulously packed my life onto trucks. Are you certain you're prepared for everything? As the final box was loaded, Luke inquired. My family was clustered behind their automobiles, giving me looks that varied from skepticism to contempt. On a bright Thursday morning, 5 years of selflessness, deceit, and unspoken animosity culminated. What's humorous, do you? For the first time in years, I said as I got into my car. I think I'm breathing. Trinity gave my hand a squeeze. To what location? As I turned on the engine, I took one final glance at the life I was leading, the family I had lost, and the house I had rescued, leaving behind at last. Anywhere except here. I saw Rosalind yelling something I couldn't hear in my rearview mirror as we were leaving. However, I was unable to hear her voice for once. Social media is where the aftermath first appears. Mom's Facebook post portrayed me as a monster who had shattered her sister's ambitions and abused family trust. The comments were full with prayers and thoughts from her country club pals. Did you notice this? Trinity threw her phone on the coffee table in our new apartment. Your mother is accusing you of forging the document. I read the post through. It's funny that she omitted the bit about their initial attempt to sell it. It buzzed on my phone. One more banned number. 12 calls have come in since the morning. Mostly legal advice from Dad's gambling friends. Nicole. We both jumped when there was a knock on the door. It's in the east. Can we have a conversation? Trinity's eyebrows went up. She opened the door when I gave her a nod. Easton didn't look good. There were heavy bags beneath his eyes and wrinkles in his normally immaculate suit. Rosalind has been watching my phone, but I know I should have phoned first. Enter. I pointed to the sofa. Please, coffee. He took a deep seat. Since Thursday, I've been going over everything. The debts, the house, everything. Why was I not informed? Did you think I was real over? Rosalind Trinity brought him a coffee, which he accepted. Most likely not. But now he showed me a text thread on his phone. I've been asked to invest in some by your dad. Yes, of course. Claims to know a man. I'll guess. Jerry, perhaps. How did you 3 years earlier he attempted to sell the house to the same individual? While I was still making mortgage payments? I showed him the note I had discovered. Easton's expression dimmed. Don't you think there's more? A notification appeared on my phone before I could respond? I was tagged in a public post by Rosalind. Some sisters end up becoming great friends. Others turn as cunning snakes that ruin families. Easton muttered, She's been like this all week. The wedding has been postponed. She continues promising to fix things and find a way to make you pay. In relation to payment, Trinity launched an online banking application. This morning, your fiancé attempted to gain access to Nicole's previous accounts. Fortunately, we relocated everything. Easton wrapped his hands around his head. I no longer even recognize her. Or perhaps I didn't know her at all. We all looked up through the window because there was a ruckus outside. Rosalind was running across the parking lot when I saw her. High-end purses that swing like a weapon. How did she, Easton, began? Most likely they followed you. I got to my feet. Prepare your phone, Trinity. Before we could close the door, it exploded open. There stood Rosalind, perfect mascara, in spite of her anger. You bitch who destroys homes. She hurled her drink in my direction. Some expensive iced coffee that left a brown stain on my shirt. Are you happy now? Everything is damaged by you? Rosalind Easton took the initiative. Put an end to this. Hold on, our future was stolen by her. We were intended to live in that house. I wiped coffee from my face and added, It was never yours. As usual, you simply thought you earned it. We are related. She let out a scream. Oh hi, you owe us what? I lost the money I made throughout those years. I placed my life on hold. Oh, Nicole, poor thing. She gave a smirk. Playing the victim all the time? You believe that you are so ideal and moral? You're only envious, though, because my parents have always loved me more. There was silence in the room. Even Rosalind seemed surprised by what she had said. You're right, I muttered. You were loved more by them. You all ensured that I would never forget it. Karen's voice filled the room as my phone buzzed once again, alerting me to a message from a number I hadn't seen in years. It's your Aunt Nicole. I heard the events. You need to know something about the true reason why everything went wrong, as if they had. I'm Rosalind. The face turned pallid. You dare not speak to her. Why not? I moved in closer. She could tell me about the previous times you attempted to take something that wasn't yours, and I'm afraid of that. The tone of Rosalind Easton's voice had changed. What is she discussing? Nothing. As usual, she is lying? Her voice trembled, though. We're heading out immediately. No. Easton did not move. I'd want to hear this. All right. She picked up her luggage. Remain here with this resentful, isolated failure. Check to see if I'm interested. She slammed the door so forcefully that a painting tumbled from the wall as she ran out. Trinity hummed softly. She had a record of everything. That was intense indeed. Are you all right? I was questioned by Easton, before turning to my phone where Aunt Karen's message was still waiting. I glanced at my coffee-stained shirt. No, but I will be. I hit the play button on the voicemail. What did they do to you, Nicole? The home wasn't the only issue. This is part of a larger narrative. Backwards in time. The will of your grandma. The initial action. They have a lot of experience with this game. When you're prepared to face the reality, give me a call. My eyes locked with Trinity's. Next is Easton's. The air changed something, similar to the time before a storm. Are you prepared to delve further? Trinity inquired. I kept Karen's number handy. It's time to see what more they have been concealing. The residence of Aunt Karen was just as I had recalled. On the porch of a little blue home are wind chimes. The family cut her off when I was 12, so I hadn't come here since. You arrived. Before I could knock, she opened the door. Her eyes were as bright as ever, but her hair had become silver with age. I doubted you would. Trinity returned to the car after giving me a squeeze. In 2 hours, I'll come get you. I followed Karen to her kitchen where a folder full of papers was waiting on the table. Tea. Let's not engage in small conversation. I took a seat. This has to do with Grandma's will. Still, she poured 2 cups. Did your mother never explain to you why I stopped attending family events? According to Mom, you had a financial argument. Cash. Karen gave a sour laugh. 3 months before to Mom's passing, I discovered them attempting to falsify her signature on property transfer forms. My hands began to shake. What? The home. You were meant to receive your house instantly. Mom was aware of Marvin's gambling habits. Regarding his facilitation, she wished to keep you safe. She produced a yellow sheet of paper. This is Will's original form. After they destroyed the official copy, I retained a copy. I read it twice. There was my name, as clear as day. The property's sole inheritor. Karen went on, they killed the will. Rewrote everything using Jerry, their lawyer friend. The same Jerry. Dad had made an attempt to sell. The pieces began to fit together, but without my signature, they were unable to transfer the deed. Slowly, I said, they needed me to keep it from going into foreclosure because of this. In order to coerce you into signing it later, they needed it in my name first. Karen nodded. They've been playing this game for years, setting up Rosalind as the golden child, making you feel worthless, indebted, the perfect scapegoat. My voice sounded distant, always trying to earn their love. You weren't the black sheep, Nicole. You were the sacrifice. My phone buzzed a text from Easton. Found something in Rollins' email. Old messages about the house. You need to see this. There's more. Karen pulled out another document. 2 years ago, your mother tried to add Rollins' name to the deed while you were still paying the mortgage. How do you know all this? I work at the county records office. She smiled grimly. They didn't know that when they tried to file the paperwork. Another text from Easton. She knew about everything. The will, the forgery attempts. She helped them all this time. I whispered. Every extra shift, every missed opportunity. It was never going to be enough, was it? They designed it that way. Karen reached across the table. You weren't failing them, Nicole. They were failing you. My phone kept buzzing. Trinity had sent a link to a local community forum where Mom was playing the victim card. Heartbroken mother seeks prayers. Eldest daughter betrays family trust. I have to do something, I said. They can't just get away with this. What are you thinking? I looked at the paperwork sprawled across the table. Evidence of years of manipulation, fraud attempts. Calculated abuse. The truth. I stated all of it. It'll ruin them. They wrecked themselves. I started gathering the documents. I'm just going to make sure everyone knows it. Karen smiled the same smile I'd seen in old photos of my grandmother. There's one more thing you should know. Your mother and Rosalind. They tried this before. What do you mean? She opened up an old news story on her iPad. Do you recall your cousin Sarah 10 years ago? She had a mental breakdown. I looked at the headline. A local lady kills herself following a family property dispute. They took her there, Karen muttered. The same technique, the same pattern. She just lacked the strength to defend herself. I balled my hands into fists. Send me everything. How will you respond? I thought of Rosalind. Smug face. Mom's fake tears. Dad's dismissive anger about years of gaslighting and guilt trips and calculated cruelty. I'm going to make sure Sir gets justice too. I got to my feet and I know just where to begin. I was given a last envelope by Karen. You received a letter from your grandmother. She was aware of their plans. When you're ready, read it. Outside. Trinity was waiting in the car. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. More like a few. I presented the papers to her. Give Easton a call. Ask Luke if he knows of a good lawyer and invite him to meet us at the apartment. Why Sarah was on my mind regarding the will, about years of planned abuse disguised as affection within the family. Because it's time to reveal the true story, I knew exactly who I should send my email to first when I took out my phone and opened it. It was a straightforward topic line. To the Never Was family. The automobile was started by Trinity. Are you certain about this? The proof in my lap at the future extending out in front of me, finally free of their shadows, caught my attention as I glanced at Karen standing in the doorway. Watch me. The country club ballroom filled with chatter. What should have been Rosalind wedding rehearsal dinner had become a family support gathering. Mom's attempt to salvage face after everything fell apart. I hadn't intended to come, but when Easton texted that Rosalind was preparing to announce a fresh beginning at the family estate, I knew I couldn't miss it. Are you ready? Trinity adjusted my blazer as we stepped in. Everyone's staring. I whispered, let them. She laced her arm through mine. They're about to gaze a lot harder. Mom was the first to notice us. Halfway to her lips, her glass of champagne froze. You weren't invited, Nicole. I was, in fact. I held up the invitation from Easton. +1. Dad showed there with a flushed face from drinking. You're displaying some nerve here. I wouldn't miss this, I see. I grinned. Not Rosalind in particular. Big news. Rosalind clinked her glass for attention as though she had been called. Her expression was jubilant despite her weight loss. We appreciate everyone's presence in helping our family through this time of change. There was a sympathetic murmur from the crowd. Well, things have been difficult lately, she said, giving me a fierce look. I'm overjoyed to report that Daddy has managed to repurchase our family house. This morning, our offer was accepted by the new owners. There was a clatter. Dramatic tears were brushed away by Mom. That's intriguing. I spoke loudly. The room fell quiet since yesterday the new owners signed a non-transfer agreement. What Rosalind's glass trembled. For at least 5 years, they are unable to sell. I took my phone out. Oh, and Jerry, my dad, phoned. He instructed me to inform you that the casino is still awaiting payment. Dad's face turned pale. Did you speak with Jerry? We had a fantastic chat regarding faked paperwork and unlawful property transactions. I looked at Mom. Do we also need to notify everyone about cousin Sarah? Don't you dare. Mom gave a hiss. How about Sarah? From the throng, someone called. Nothing. Rosalind hurried on. Like usual, she's lying, am I? I had emails, so I linked my phone to the presentation screen in the room. Bank documents and the original will. Even the documents they attempted to use to transfer the deed behind my back were destroyed. Documents flooded the screen. As individuals began reading, gasps echoed across the assembly. Switch that off. Easton halted Dad's attempt for the controls. They ought to see, he added softly. Everyone ought to see that you assisted them. I informed Rosalind that you were aware of everything, including Sarah. You assisted them as you watched them tear me apart for years. I didn't, she began. Examine your son's emails. I navigate to a different screen. Nicole is working late again, Mom. Excellent. It's time to file the documents. Another gulp. Someone's phone started recording. Everything is being ruined by you. Once more, Rosalind shouted. No, I turned to the audience. They destroyed a cousin, a sister, and a daughter. They falsified records, committed deception, drove Sarah to end her life. Lies. Mom let out a cry. Where is your family? Family. I chuckled. Let me explain the concept of family. I explained everything over the following 5 minutes. The attempts at fraud and deception. The tale of Sarah. The fear of the throng increased with each revelation. We've informed the cops. I was done. The falsified documents are of special interest to the DA. Additionally, the case of Sarah is being reopened. Dad sank back in a chair. Black rivers poured out of Mom's mascara. Like a security deposit, you all bet on me. My voice echoed through the quiet room as I spoke. I simply cashed out. Trinity intervened when Rosalind lunged at me. Charges of assault if you touch her. When this isn't over, join the scam, Rosalind spat. It is, in fact. Eastern took a step forward. I've told the cops just about everything. Whispers followed like smoke as the throng began to move toward the exits. Mom's pals from the country club were eager to go. This family has been devastated by you. Mom cried. No. I unplugged my phone. Years ago you did that. I simply want to make sure that everyone understands why. I heard Rosalind's final frantic cry as Trinity and I left. I'll make you pay for this. But her voice carried no force now. The reality had torn it away. Outside, Karen was waiting in her car. How did it go? I showed her the footage someone had previously placed online. This is something they will never get over. Excellent. She gave my hand a squeeze. Sarah would be pleased. Messages rang on my phone. Assistance from random viewers of the video, making connections amongst old pals from years ago. Reporters are requesting feedback. Now what Trinity inquired. Through the glass, I observed the real-time breakdown of my family's well-crafted facade. In a single night, years of falsehoods were exposed. I grinned now. Let karma finish now. The beginning of truth. While Trinity and I went over refurbishment plans, the local news played softly in my new workplace. Due in part to the viral tale of how I had salvaged and sold my own property, our home repair business was flourishing. Trinity checked her phone and stated, "Another email from a reporter. They want to know if you will discuss the plea agreement. Remove it." My attention was on the plans. We've closed that chapter. I was drawn to the voice of the news anchor. Marvin, a local businessman, may spend up to 5 years in prison for forgery and fraud. Next week, his daughter Rosalind and wife Mary will be sentenced. Trinity turned it down. The sentence is not being watched by you. Karen is pursuing Sarah. On the blueprint, I drew a line. That's sufficient. It buzzed on my phone. Easton. Following the affair, he had established his own financial consultancy business. Hello. Have a moment? You ought to meet someone. Customer Better, the daughter of Sarah. She is now 18. Just learned the truth about what actually occurred. Wishes to express gratitude. I froze my fingers over the blueprints. I was unaware that she had. Most folks didn't either. She was shielded from the entire situation by her adoptive parents. However, she looked into it after seeing the video. A notice appeared. Rosalind tried to enter my accounts once again. She refused to give up even if it meant going to jail. I responded, "Send her by the office. I'll find time." I hung up and went down to the window. Our most recent project involved building affordable homes out of an abandoned factory. I wish I had a location like that when I was fighting to keep that house together. My door was knocked on by Luke. "Have you found the desired property listings? Regards." I grabbed the folder. "How is the market doing?" "The timing is intriguing," he smiled. "Your former residence was just advertised once more. Owners are relocating abroad. I'll guess. Rosalind is attempting to purchase it using a fictitious business. This month's third effort." He took a seat. "Doesn't she ever learn?" Not one of them did. I showed him an email on my laptop. From her sister's spare room, Mom continues to send guilt trips every day. Dad is trying to get investors for his jail return idea. Trinity gave a snort. They are constant, at least. Sarah's eyes met those of a young woman barely 18 who came in my doorway. "Nicole, miss. My name is Hannah. My birth mother was Sarah." There was silence in the room. I got to my feet. "Please come in." She held a folder in her hand. These were in my adoption documents, my mother's letters describing what they did to her. "How about you?" I made an effort to correct it. For her, I whispered quietly. "Did you?" Hannah grinned despite her tears. "They took the trust fund from her, the one that was utilized for the residence. It has been retrieved. Now my college is covered." Just how she desired. Luke and Trinity slipped out, leaving us by ourselves. "Additionally, I have something for you." I took out an envelope. "The one I got from Karen. This letter was written by your grandma. The authentic one. Not the one that they had her write." Hannah accepted it with trembling hands. Are you going to read it with me?" Together we sat and read the final honest words of a lady who had sought to shield us both from the lies. "Nicole, my darling, it started. They have already attempted to seize everything if you are reading this, but keep in mind that homes may be rebuilt, families are selectable, and the truth eventually comes to light no matter how long it has been hidden." Once more my phone buzzed. Karen Rosalind texted me once her punishment was over. 5 years. Mary received 3. Are they still accusing you? I presented the message to Hannah. She took hold of my hand. Is the pain still there every day less? I surveyed my workspace, taking in the life I had created from the ashes of their treachery. They believed that by breaking me, they could better control me. It made me impossible to shatter again instead. Outside my window, Hannah said, "Mom would be proud of both of us." A fresh wall was constructed by the construction workers against the sky below. The sun shone on our corporate sign. Renovations in Phoenix are creating fresh starts. Do you want coffee? Hannah was asked. I know a few tales about your mother. Not their versions, but the genuine ones. She wiped her tears and nodded. That would be nice. Trinity yelled after me as we left. How am I supposed to handle these? She displayed a pile of letters. The family is making more guilt trips. There was no more of that. Sarah Hannah truth repercussions and the family we select were all on my mind. Recycle them. I said we're constructing something better now. Hannah grinned. Sarah, bright, unwavering smile. We left the darkness where they belonged and moved into the brightness together. Behind us,